The Laura Ingraham Show.
855-40-LAURA joining us now. It's a great pleasure to have Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, on with us to give us his perspective on what might change in the legislation and how might conservatives come together from the Freedom Caucus and other conservative organizations to ultimately support a health care reform effort. Speaker Ryan, it's good to talk to you. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fine. How are you doing, Laura?
I've seen you on every show. My goodness, you were on,
yeah,
every time I turn around yesterday, you're on another show from Janesville.
I just came off of Maria Bartiromo's show.
Okay, fine. We don't get the morning exclusive. And by the way, I love how everyone says it's an exclusive. Like, it's an exclusive in this hour.
It's exclusive for this 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about where we are. Yesterday, there was more intrigue about what was happening behind closed doors. And the Tom Cotton point that gets raised, and Rand Paul has done the same thing, is that if you all have pretty high confidence that you can get the legislation passed in generally in its current form, and that you're very confident in phase 3 as well, which would include a lot more measures to encourage and competitiveness, then why not simplify this whole thing and do the full repeal of Obamacare in one piece of very simple legislation, full repeal, and concurrently introduce legislation that would do all that good stuff that you've been talking about in phase 3?
Because that requires Democrats. And the last thing I think Democrats, who are the architects of Obamacare, want to do is help us create a free market healthcare system. Let me go back a second. In January, when we passed the budget, which gave us this ability, this budget reconciliation bill that can go through the Senate without a filibuster, leaders of the Freedom Caucus, of the Republican Study Committee, of the Tuesday Group, the various groups here in the House, said you must put repeal and replace together in the same bill. We will vote for this if you have replace and repeal in the same bill. The president did a press conference in January saying we're going to do repeal and replace together in the same bill. I think he said in the same hour or something like that. We campaigned on repeal and replace. We have it within our power as Republicans to put most of our replace legislation in the repeal bill and get through the Senate without Democrats, without a filibuster. This is the promise we made. This is the promise we made not only to our members in January, but to the people of this country. Now, what Tom is talking about is the things that we cannot put in here because of the Senate rules are the things that will pass in phase 3. I actually don't want to let Democrats off the hook on those things. I don't think Democrats are ever going to work with us to establish free market health care, let the states open up their own markets, have health savings accounts, equalize the tax treatment of health care, and repeal Obamacare. But I don't want to right now say that no Democrat's going to vote for interstate shopping across state lines or association health plans. Let the farmer buy their insurance through the American Farm Bureau plan. Let the small business person buy their insurance through National Federation of Independent Businesses. Let individuals both buy their insurance through whatever trade association they want to. I don't want to let Democrats off the hook on that.
Speaker Ryan, I'm very confused about this. Why would it be letting them off the hook? If you start that debate now, you'll have a 2-year phase-in anyway. You'll have a 2-year grace period with a repeal anyway. So why not say this is what we're doing? And by the way, do you want to defend this the collusion that exists now on the part of all these healthcare providers? We're going to take that fight to every vulnerable senator. We're going to take it across the country, and over the next year.
Which is the plan? That is the plan. Donald Trump is just so excited about barnstorming America in Democrat Senate district states where he won double digits, like Missouri and Indiana and North Dakota and Montana. He's excited about saying, your senator is standing in the way of these good reforms. That's what we want to do. But we made a promise that we would do repeal and replace.
But you're not fully repealing Obamacare, right? I mean, you keep saying that, but you're not fully repealing it.
We're doing everything you can do in reconciliation. So remember, this is the thing we had in 2015. We passed everything we can in reconciliation to repeal this law. This is that. That's what we're doing here. And then we added replace to it. Block granting Medicaid back to the states. Equalizing the tax treatment of health care. By the way, what we're passing is the plan we ran on in 2016. It's the plan that we've been drafting with the White House and the Senate committees since January. And so I think there's a lot of misinformation and confusion out there. And we want members to improve these bills. That's the legislative process. Making the refinements and improvements to make this bill even better as it goes through the 4-committee process in the House is how laws are written. And then if the Senate doesn't like it, we pass this bill, we send it to them, and then they take it from there. If a senator doesn't like a certain provision in this bill, then they can go amend the bill. That's how bills become law. So senators aren't helpless to what the House does. The senators have their own process. They actually call it vote-a-rama. So you can amend this thing however you want to when the bill goes to the Senate, and that's what I would encourage the Senate to do. If they think there's something that should be changed and improved, then they should go amend the bill when the bill goes to the Senate, because that's how legislation works. So the point I'm trying to make, Laura, is the worst thing we could do is not follow up on our word. We need to keep our word, and our word was we would repeal and replace this law. It is within our own power as Republicans to do as much as repeal and replace as possible.
But isn't
it is our obligation to do that.
Yeah, I've heard you say that, and I get what you're saying. But isn't the ultimate goal to bring down the cost of health care and
Yes.
ultimately health insurance and the rising cost of health insurance is really a symptom of the lack of competition in the marketplace, correct? I mean, that's really what's going on. And as far as I can tell, not much in this so-called repeal. And, Ramin Asqui, who I'd really want you to talk to about this, I mean, he has he has done the most extensive writing about this and review of this. He's a practicing renowned cardiologist in Washington. And he said, Laura, if they want to bring down the price of health care, then they have to break up the healthcare monopolies in the United States. That will be a popular move coast to coast. You could start arguing that point now after you fully repeal Obamacare. But you're saying you don't have 51 votes to repeal Obamacare today in reconciliation. Fully repeal it.
No, you can't. You can repeal the fiscal parts of it.
Right.
You can't repeal, say, like essential health benefits, the regulatory stuff.
Yeah, but that all goes away without that'll all go away without the other parts.
We basically are repealing it because we're ending its fiscal pieces. If you defund the law doesn't work. So that's what we're doing is we're basically defunding. We're taking out the taxes and the spending of Obamacare. And without the taxes and spending of Obamacare, there really isn't an Obamacare. But and then we're replacing it with Republican tax policy that's been long-standing stuff that the Heritage Foundation and the American Enterprise Institute have been talking for years.
So why are they all against this?
It's the Tom Price bill that most conservatives co-sponsored here just this last year. But back to your other point, you're right about this. Let me just back up. You are right. Our goal is to improve access to health care by lowering the costs of health care and increasing competition. And so this is what Phase 2 is all about. Tom Price can deregulate health care. When the Democrats wrote this law, which they took 60 votes to write it, they put 1,400 provisions in the law that says the Secretary has all this discretion. Well, Tom Price is going to use that discretion in reverse, and the states will be able to create their own free markets in health care. He's going to deregulate the federal system. And so what you'll see with something that is within our control, the Trump administration, this is what Price is working on. He's been in the job 2 or 3 weeks. He's already way down the path getting this done, deregulating the healthcare system, which is not included in this bill because that's regulatory. So the point I would make is you take those first 2 moves, the repeal and replace, that's reconciliation, that's Republican only, and the Trump administration's deregulation that they have the authority to do, those 2 moves right there dramatically lower healthcare costs, increase choices, go back to states setting up free markets. And by the way, even the CBO, which I would argue is not real kind to free market health care, even the CBO says this first bill lowers costs. This first bill, when the reforms kick in, bring the premiums down. So even the CBO is saying this first wave of reforms lowers premiums. Then you bring the Tom Price, Donald Trump reforms, that brings them down even lower. And we're going to pass these other bills, which we can't put in reconciliation because they take 60 votes, and put pressure on Senate Democrats to support them. We're bringing the McCarran-Ferguson bill to the floor next week, which breaks up these monopolies you're talking about. That bill you cannot put in reconciliation.
You voted against the reimportation legislation, right? That would have allowed more competition among drug prices.
Yeah, I'm talking about that was probably 15 years ago.
Yeah, but I'm bringing that up for a reason, because pharma sprinkles a lot of money around politics, Republicans and Democrats. So that's a separate question, but I'm going to the price of care, and I don't have to tell you that the price of prescription drugs have been flying up for a long time. And
I don't.
Yeah,
I don't remember whether I voted for or against reimportation. Maybe my
against. I think.
When was this? 1999.
Yeah, it was a while ago. But my point is, those are the kinds of very, I think, popular moves to increase competition that some Republicans were on the other side of conservatives, and I think you were one of them. Medicare Part D was another initiative that you voted in favor of, the expansion of Medicare. Other fiscal conservatives, including Mike Pence, voted against that back in 2003, I believe. So is there a divide here between you and some of these other fiscal conservatives on the way government should be involved in providing these services to individuals? Because I'm looking at perhaps a philosophical divide that's at the heart of all of this.
I think so. So Part D, we wanted to be a private system, not a public system. We wanted private plans to compete against each other for people's business. And what happened was it lowered the cost of this by 40%. It created health savings accounts. That's the law I worked on in that particular bill, which we think is critical to lowering costs and giving more health care freedom. We agree on those things. So I would say we're using our free market principles in the principle of federalism, which is get the federal government out of this stuff, and applying it to this bill. What do conservatives basically uniformly believe? Let's defederalize Medicaid and send it back to the states and cap its growth rate. This bill does that. It's the biggest entitlement reform we've ever had. This is bigger than welfare reform. This saves, just in this bill right here, over $800 billion because we're giving Medicaid back to the states and we're capping its growth rate.
Right, and you're not worried about the state.
That's what this bill does.
Yeah, you're not worried about the state budgets going belly up after this expansion starts to retreat, right? Over the shortened period of time. You're not worried about the state budgets.
But we're saying that's why we give them a couple-year glide path, so we don't blow up state budgets, because they have biennial budgets. Most states budget in 2 years, so that's why we had to have a transition so that we didn't blow up their budgets in the next couple of years. But then the expansion goes away and it's done, and so everybody's treated the same, and we give everybody we give the states basically, here's your Medicaid money, you reform your program. The federal government's not going to be doing this, and then on the people who are not on Medicaid. Conservatives, whether it was Jim DeMint when he was in Congress, whether it was Pat Toomey over here, or Tom Price, have all basically said, let's equalize the tax treatment of health care so we have a vibrant individual market. That's what tax credits and HSAs are all about.
All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to stay on this. We have a couple of other questions for you. Delighted to have Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, on the Laura Ingraham Show. Stay with us. Don't go away. From October, you said you wouldn't support the president, you wouldn't defend him, wouldn't campaign with him. I didn't think that was news. I mean, it's audio, but we kind of knew that before. But I guess the underlying concern for conservatives, and I'm seeing the tweets that are coming in, is that because of the past disagreements with and even animosity, that is, you said, is ancient history with Trump, with President Trump, that the two of you still really aren't on the same page, and that and with the health care especially, you're selling him a pig in a poke. The report that Spicer is working hard behind the scenes at the White House to try to keep this health care thing going. Bannon's kind of on the sidelines. I'd like you to address that report today in the Washington Post.
Fundamentally disagree on that. We wrote this bill with our friends in the White House and the Senate.
Which friends in the White House? On this, which friends?
Meaning the Trump people.
But which ones?
The Trump White House.
Bannon?
Mick Mulvaney, Tom Price, all those guys, the healthcare people. The point I'm saying is, and by the way, I've talked to Reince Bannon about this a number of times, we are all on the same page. I mean, absolutely. With the president. The president is bringing members of our caucus down there saying, we need you to support this. We need you to support this. They're making phone calls to remember saying, this is the right way to go. This is what we want to do.
He doesn't want it to be called Trump Care, though. They want it to be called Ryan Care.
We call it the American Health Care Act. But, hey, can I get you on something else? I just checked. I appreciate the commercial break. I voted for drug reimportation when that came through back in, 2000, 2001. And in Wisconsin, you can get them from Canada, which has an FDA equivalent regulatory regime. And that's where the safety issue comes in, which is they've got to have an FDA system in place like we do. They do. So where I come from, it's not that uncommon because we're right on the Canadian border. But so I did vote for that, just to clarify the record. But back to your other point, we are on the same page with the White House. I think there are those who would love to wedge us for one reason or another, but that's just not the case. We are on the same page. We laid out a plan for the president on how to achieve his legislative agenda in 2017. It's get the wall funded. It's make sure that we get the regulations pared back, Congress does its role on this. The administration does that role. We rebuild the military. We repeal and replace Obamacare. We reform the tax system. We get the infrastructure going. All of those things are things that we agreed that we would work on in 2017. And by the way, we laid out together jointly a timeline for how to achieve that. We were on that timeline. We were literally on the week when we decided to do this plan with the president in December. We were literally on the week we were planning on where we were planning on being. The snow knocked us off a day because there was a snowstorm here in Washington.
I have one question.
But we were literally executing the plan that we jointly wrote with the White House and the Senate.
I have one question. I know Trump campaigned on this, but why are 26-year-olds considered so infantile that they can't provide for their own health care with the 26 and under? I don't understand. We had people storming the beaches of Normandy at 17 years of age.
Yeah, I know. When they were like 9. Oh, God rest his soul. A very, very, very close friend of my family just passed away in 91, and he was 19 when he was fighting the Nazis. The answer to your question is, you just made me think of somebody was dear to me. The question is, this is in every Republican plan that was out there. The president ran on it. All the House Republican, Senate Republican replacement plans did it. Right. It's not an expensive requirement, and it just basically is. It's not a requirement. It's just allow these people to be on their
Paul Ryan,
plan.
thank you so much. Sorry we have to cut you off. Hard break here. We really appreciate you sharing your thoughts on this. Stay with us. Joining us now, and I'm so used to calling him Senator Sessions. I think this is the first time I've had the chance to call him Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who joins us now to discuss the latest on these investigations, the leaks, now taxes. I'm going to tell you this right now, General Sessions, that I pay too much in taxes. Okay, so I'm going to reveal that right now. I probably pay way more than I should pay in taxes, and so I hope that gets out there in the general public. How are you? Nice to talk to you.
Well, thank you for contributing to your country.
Yeah, to
keep making that big bucks and keep sending your share to the Treasury.
Oh,
maybe
my goodness.
we get a pay raise around here.
Exactly. Attorney General Sessions, let's talk about first this story that just will not go away. The Congress was charged by the president to look into this issue of the surveillance, the wiretapping of the campaign headquarters and the transition office in Trump Tower. Where are we now with that? Because I don't think any new evidence has been turned over to the House or to the Senate.
Laura, I was involved in the campaign, and I was an active part of the campaign. Under the Code of Federal Regulations, a prosecutor, Department of Justice employee, cannot participate in an investigation of a campaign that he had a significant role in. So I recused myself, not because I did anything wrong or know of anything wrong, but simply because the rule says if you are part of the campaign, you can't investigate the campaign. So I've turned that over to the career Deputy Attorney General, Dana Bente, who is a great guy, 30 years in the Department of Justice, and they will handle this, and if any statements need to be made, it would come from him. So I think that's the right thing for me to do. I'm confident the law was clear on that, and I've met with ethics people, and that's why I announced my recusal.
Got it. I didn't think you had to recuse yourself, by the way, but
yeah,
what do I
did.
know
I
about the
don't
law?
think there's any question about it.
What do I know about the law? But I didn't think you had to recuse yourself. I'm with Trump
on that. You know
a
lot. You're a great lawyer, and
I just think it's blood in the water. When you drop a little blood in the water, the left wants to circle, and then they go to Jeff Sessions has to resign. So, but that's neither here nor there. You're certainly not recused from what I think the president wants, which is a serious investigation into the ongoing leaks within our intelligence agencies or intelligence agencies contractors that continue to take place. And now we have leaks of information out of the IRS. Maybe it could be a preparer of taxes, I guess, all these years later, given the news last night about Donald Trump's 2005 tax returns. How do you go about this investigation into this leaking that is clearly putting people on edge and could be putting national security at risk?
This has got to be looked at. It's got to be looked at fairly and objectively. There are clearly too many leaks. Leaks of most of the kind you see. The most dramatic ones are violations of federal law. You cannot reveal classified information, and you can't reveal grand jury information. So there are a lot of things that are clearly criminal if they are leaked. And in addition to that, I believe all of us in the Department of Justice, all of us in the federal government need to maintain personal discipline. And they're just, you shouldn't even confirm the existence of an investigation because that is a problem. So we all in the Department of Justice need to go back and study the classical principles of security that I learned in my 15 years in the Department of Justice, a number of years ago. And I think it's just got to be done, and I intend to do my part in that.
There's a piece out in the Richmond Times-Dispatch that you're going to be visiting Richmond, I guess, today, right? You'll be in Richmond today talking about
Yes, I'm here today.
Fighting crime and so forth. But certain law enforcement officials not invited to the event. So what's the reason for that?
I have no idea. I did not approve any. That's the first time I've heard that. I generally believe that we have all law enforcement officials and that have a
well. The Secretary of Public Safety was a Democrat. Brian Moran is McAuliffe's Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security, and Attorney General Mark Herring. Both of them are Democrats, which leads Democrats to say that we like that Jeff Sessions is in Richmond, but this is looking like a partisan event with these two top Democrats not invited.
Well, I would just say this. I think the people who set up the meeting were focused on the sheriffs in the region, the chiefs of police in the region, and of course, as a federal official, we invited the FBI, the DEA, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the Marshal Service. And so that was the gist of how this was set up. I guess state officials may not have been invited. I don't know.
The holdovers from the Obama administration is something I've been writing about and talking about since, late December, because we understood that there have been problems in various departments. We got a lot of people who were not replaced early on, and we're concerned, a lot of us are concerned, Sean Hannity, myself, and others, that people burrowed into the bureaucracy will be working against the interests of this administration and its agenda. What can you tell us about your efforts to ensure that holdovers from the Obama administration are not undermining the Trump-Sessions agenda on crime fighting and so forth?
The President of the United States is elected to be the chief executive, and the governmental executive branch responds and must respond to his leadership. And people need to accept the fact that there'll be different priorities and emphases with a new president. And if you're going to be a career employee in the federal government, you serve that president. You served President Obama, you served President Trump. And so that's the high duty and principle. Now, all the cabinet people, as they almost always have done, they submit resignations immediately, and they leave, and the new administration puts acting people in until they get their members finally confirmed. So that's part of the process, too. United States attorneys who are part of the Department of Justice are presidentially appointed and confirmed by the Senate. They serve at the pleasure of the president, and new presidents appoint new United States attorneys. And so about half, a little more than half, had already resigned when I sent out a notice and asked for the resignations of the others. And so we'll have career, professional assistant United States attorneys become acting U.S. attorneys pending the confirmation of the new presidentially appointed and Senate-confirmed U.S. attorneys. That's the way the system works, and that's the way
Why did it take so long?
Clinton fired me, you know.
Oh, I know. You got fired. I remember that.
Yeah, that's just the way it works.
Yeah, it's the way it works. Hey, why did you guys take so long? That was my only question. That was the only concern I had. Why did it take like 45 days to tell these people to turn in the resignation letter? I would have done it day one.
Well, you could certainly do that. And as I said, most top cabinet people and their top deputies resigned immediately as part of the tradition. But U.S. attorneys, a lot of them have held on, and we felt it was time to move forward. I've got some new ideas about crime and policies that we want to execute. And we thought it was time to get the process moving and begin to advance the Trump approach to law enforcement and creating the rule of law.
Attorney General Sessions, the ongoing consent decrees that are in place across the United States involving a number of police departments, Cleveland, I believe Oakland. And many of them, of course, were undertaken and put in place during the Obama administration. Have you begun the process of reviewing those, and will you make changes to any of those that are currently in effect after your review?
We are looking at that. There are a number of principles that I believe in. First and foremost, we need to make absolutely sure, Laura, that any consent decree does not increase crime, that does not reduce public safety, does not make it more dangerous to walk the streets. And we have had some instances where the restraints that curtail community-based policing and the broken windows concepts that have proven to work so well, some of that has been retreated from. In addition, some of the decrees have hurt the morale of the police officers. They're not as aggressive as they used to be to actually confront crime on the streets. We've seen in Chicago, for example, after a lawsuit involving the ACLU that Chicago eventually settled, we've had a dramatic drop-off in the number of arrests and stops on the streets, while the murder rate in Chicago is going through the roof. So first and foremost, police departments have to be disciplined. Police officers have to be disciplined. They have to respect the citizens of their communities, and most of them do overwhelmingly. And we've got to be careful that a few bad apples don't cause us to pull away from proven crime-fighting techniques that save lives by the hundreds.
And you have the authority, do you not, to pull out of some of these consent decrees?
Well, consent decrees, as you know, Laura,
managed by the courts.
Court orders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The cases were initially brought by the Justice Department of the Obama administration, correct?
That's correct. And some of them probably do need to be reviewed, and we need to study them. But often the cities, the mayors in some of these cities and all like these decrees, and they don't want to come out, they don't want to change them maybe. So we'll have to see. Each one will be different, but I do take very seriously my responsibility to try to make sure that any action that involves a police department that has had some difficulties, and we may have to take some lawsuits against departments who are not meeting their constitutional duties. But if we do so, any agreement, any settlement, any court order that gets entered into should be done in a way that does not make it harder for them to do their jobs. That's fundamental. And finally, state and local police departments are free to run their business, and it should not be micromanaged by the federal government as a general philosophy anyway.
Attorney General Sessions, on the issue of marijuana use, the Obama administration decided that it was not going to go after recreational marijuana use. Obviously, legalization efforts across the country are being pushed by a lot of big business interests, I call them big pot. In Colorado, a lot of people like the tax money they're getting, but we have all sorts of other terrible effects of increased marijuana use among young people. Will this department begin prosecuting the sale and use of marijuana?
I do not believe that this country is going to be better off if we have marijuana sold at every corner grocery store, and that it's available in large amounts to even teenagers. No matter what the law is, once you make it quasi-legal or basically legal, then it filters easily into the young people's hands where it does the most psychological damage, according to the New England Journal of Medicine and other studies of this. So I think this is American Medical Association is the one that did, I think, the final last major report on the dangers of it. So that's a big deal. Secondly, it remains, as you know, federal law remains in effect, and it makes it unlawful to distribute or possess.
Fantastic. We're looking forward to your speech today in Richmond. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, thank you so much. Slate wrote this really funny piece. And she tweeted, breaking, we've got Trump tax returns tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And so the internet went into this frenzy of reporting. And so no one really knew at that time whether she had all of Trump's returns or just 1 year or a couple pages. And could it be that this would actually bring down Donald Trump? This is finally what we have to really put an end to this presidency. Now we know why he was hiding all this information. This dramatic buildup. Dramatic. And I was thinking to myself, wow, they have these incredible sources.
Americans. Despite this substantial income figure and tax paid, it is totally illegal to steal and publish tax returns. The dishonest media can continue to make this part of their agenda, while the president will focus on his, which includes tax reform that will benefit all Americans.
Okay, that's totally confused you, and we've jumped down into the story about, 40 minutes into the hour where she was reporting this. But she was responding to criticism at the time that what she was doing was illegal. That's not really the point. The point here is that MSNBC, the cable outlet of NBC News, is on a personal and political jihad against Donald Trump. The big breaking news story is that in 2005, Donald Trump made $150 million, not bad, and he paid about $38 million in taxes, which is about 25%. Wow, that's a big scandal, paying 25% in taxes. One problem. He paid a higher tax rate than MSNBC Comcast, which was 24%, much higher than the Obamas, which was a measly 19%. And, of course, old Bernie Sanders only paid 13%. But Trump paid $36.5 million in taxes in 2005. And I said on Fox last night, I was on with Hannity, I said he needs a better tax lawyer. Why is he paying that much in taxes? He's paying 25% in taxes? But someone's leaking information. Maybe this came from a third party, someone in third party who's paying out. Maybe that.
Could Trump tax returns shed light on whether any reasonable outlay of expenses on Trump's part might explain why somebody would suddenly want to pay Donald Trump more than double what he paid for that property after only a few years at a time when housing prices in that area were dropping and not rising? I mean, if this wasn't just some Russian oligarch dumping almost $60 million into Donald Trump's pocket for no discernible reason, couldn't Trump tax returns clear that up?
Someone inside the IRS or some third party who is involved in tax preparation released 2 pages of the 2005 taxes, which I would say actually makes Trump looks like he earns a lot of money and he pays a lot of taxes. I just don't think this is a big problem. Oh, Steve Ratner was upset on, remember, he was the old car czar for the Obama administration. He was upset about the charitable giving. Let's listen.
We haven't learned a heck of a lot. Maybe the most interesting thing in a way we've learned is that under Trump's tax proposal, he would eliminate something called the alternative minimum tax, which is a tax designed to make people who have lots of deductions like depreciation, which the Trump spokesman referred to, pay some amount of tax. And without that provision, which Trump wants to repeal as part of his tax plan, Trump would have paid something more like $5 million of taxes. So you can see an example for how a Trump tax plan would help the wealthy at the expense of the less wealthy.
Oh, my God. 855-40-LAURA. How many of you think that when the IRS selectively leaks, if this is what happened in it, and to have it be a third-party tax preparer, to me that seems fanciful. To me this seems, so the cynical way is, Donald Trump released it himself. Rachel Maddow actually asked that last night. She raised that question. How do we know that he didn't release this information himself? Why wasn't MSNBC, cutting into its programming? Another person was asking, instead of, cutting into its programming, if they had a big scoop rather than running a countdown clock. Well, the thing is, they didn't have a big scoop. Donald Trump and the White House came out to preempt her on her own show about the taxes. But the bigger question is, do we have someone inside the IRS who is leaking this information out? That's a federal crime. And it could happen to anyone who gets in the way of either the Obamas, the agenda of the globalists, whatever. Well, it's not just about Donald Trump and his enemies. This could be about any American if this is what we're talking about. And when I see this happening,
For years, Donald Trump has refused to release his tax returns. Now an exclusive report from MSNBC has done it for him. The fact that he paid the least amount of taxes possible, let's say there are more returns that show that, that plays right to his base. I mean, he was very proud of that point. And I remember when he said it during the debate thinking, they're going to say he's smart to pay the least amount of taxes that he legally has to pay. So it's not damaging information.
No, it isn't at all. But they treated it over there at NBC like this was the second coming of Watergate. Someone pays more taxes than they're legally required to. Tell me who that is. Is it Mark Zuckerberg? Is it George Clooney? Is it Barbara Streisand? Tell me any of the liberal icons out there in the entertainment world or the liberals politicians. Tell me how many of them pay more in taxes than they're legally required to. The Clintons? Really? Wait, okay, show me that return. They can write a check bigger than they're obligated to pay. Well, why don't they do that? But we're dealing with, and Steve Bannon was exactly right. We need to play the Bannon soundbite every single day. I almost reference it every day. That's a clue that we should play it. Every single day, this is going to be a fight against the media because they are acting as the permanent advancement of liberalism. And they will work against us and fight against us every single day with lies, half-truths, implicit threats, phony stories, fake news. That's what they're going to do. And Steve Bannon at CPAC was exactly right. This is not patty cake with the media. These people need to be exposed and called out. And I will say, in Slate's favor here, and this is a liberal website ridiculing Rachel Maddow at MSNBC. That's how bad it is. Slate is ridiculing NBC. After the first break, at which point the tax returns were already available on the internet and glossed by the Daily Beast, Maddow was joined by the guests, and she began asking how the individual got the pages, Johnston, how he knew Trump hadn't sent the returns in himself. Johnston said that he could have. A few hours after Maddow finished airing, this became a popular conspiracy theory simply because if Donald Trump were to share any of his tax returns, the 2005 1040 seems like a good candidate. Trump paid taxes at a rate of around 4%, but because of the alternative minimum tax, he also paid an additional $31 million. And the form revealed that rather than not paying taxes and making no money, Trump actually paid $38 million on a $150 million income. And as the show went on, it became clear that Maddow knew she didn't quite have the scoop that she had promised. And again, the breathless teases in and out of commercial breaks. I mean, this was just an embarrassment. How many of you saw this? 855-40 Laura. Ken in Georgia, line 1. Ken, go ahead.
Hey, Laura, I'm in a business where anybody can send anything with the IRS and the 1040, but we don't take it with a grain of salt until we verify with the IRS. So these two pieces of paper could be worthless because what was actually sent to the IRS and what's confirmed with the IRS. And anybody that does this or verifies this for a business, for a line of work knows that. So once again, two pieces of paper don't really prove anything.
Well, why doesn't Rachel Maddow release her taxes? Why don't all these public figures, especially the do-gooder liberals who believe we should be spending more on social programs, why don't they release their taxes? So we know exactly how much they pay, how much they give, to whom they give. You know, let them all reveal what they give. 9 MSNBC personalities had tax liens filed against them, according to Heat Street. Review of public records show that a total of 6 current, prominent, and MSNBC pundits have recently settled federal or state tax liens, while one still has tax problems. Moreover, at least 2 other hosts who recently left the network have also had massive tax liens filed against them. Well, this is, of course, this is my favorite. This was written, by the way, back in January. The Reverend Al Sharpton, the Sunday morning host on MSNBC, easily comes in first place when it comes to issues with the tax man. He and his various entities, including several dissolved by New York for failure to pay taxes, currently owe about $1.5 million in state and federal taxes.
This is sleazy and reckless.
Exactly. It's a staggering sum, but down substantially from the $4.5 million in outstanding tax liens tallied by the New York Times 2 years ago. You know, I think there has to be more reporting on the press here. The press, they want people to believe that they're the arbiters of what is right and wrong, and that they're objective in holding Trump accountable. A lot of them do. And if so, then I think we need to test their objectivity, or at least how about their judgment? They want to put everyone else under the microscope. All these members of the press should go to their high schools, go to their colleges, find out what kinds of people they really are, who are their current associates. Have they ever talked to the Russians? Have they ever talked to Russian ambassadors? What business interests do they have all around the world that might be affected by policies that they are either for or against? I mean, they act like they're acting in the public good, for the public benefit, for the public good. So it's time to report on them. I really believe that. Not just the fact checking, by the way. That's not good enough. I think when the tables are turned, and when they are under the white hot spotlight, we'll see how many of them can hold up to the scrutiny. 855-40 Laura. Reaction to my interview with Paul Ryan. A lot of you watched. Listened to the interview, and also Jeff Sessions. Sessions said that they're going to be re-examining our priorities on states that have legalized marijuana use. He also said they're re-examining these consent decrees with police departments across the United States based on the principles that Jeff Sessions and Donald Trump hold dear. So we made a lot of news with Jeff Sessions. We'll take a break, get to all your calls. IRS leaks. If this came out of the IRS, will they ever be able to find these people, and what should be done to them? Prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Stay with us. Coming undone because the Trump people released the information about the taxes before her show. And so she kept teasing this, but it was already out on the internet, spoiling her big feverino on, we've got breaking news. I love it. You know it's good when they have a countdown clock, though. That's always when it's going to be really good. And you also know it's good when even liberal websites are criticizing MSNBC. These people they really should just set themselves up as a political action committee, because that's essentially what they are. They're just a political action committee, and Trump needs to deal with them that way. I don't see why anyone who reports for MSNBC, given how wrong they are, and given how often they are purveyors of, a good friend of mine said, it's not even fake news, it's clown news. Maybe she should come out with a clown nose on to do clown news. That'd be perfect. Also, MSNBC has a bunch of hosts with tax liens. I've already done that story. Oh, what? So what? So what if a bunch of them pay less in taxes than Donald Trump does? And what if the Obamas do? Trump, you've got to understand this. Trump is a bad person. So any story that we can get, that we can put out there, is going to be written and teased in the worst possible light to hurt Trump the most. That's just where it is. A lot of people are reacting to the Ryan interview. We'll get to that. Thomas in Pennsylvania heard me with Paul Ryan. Tomas, go ahead, my friend, quickly.
Hi, I was really sick of the pavement of lies all the way to his office. There was no full repeal. There were no cost reductions even mentioned. No deductible reductions at all. And there really still is a backdoor mandate in this proposal. Every time he says it's complicated, you better sit back and take a deep breath.
I made the point about the 26-year-olds. Like, well, why are they infants? Why do they have to be covered? And well, there's not really a good answer for that. But a lot of this, though, you gotta hand it over to the White House and say, guys, you have the chance to pull the plug on this right now and redo it. And they should. That is exactly what they should do. They should see the conservative firestorm for what it is. It's truthful, and we're trying to save him from stepping into this snare that I think will hurt him if he doesn't turn it around. I appreciate that insight, Thomas. Thank you very much. We have a lot more to get to on the Laura Ingraham Show, especially on refugee policy, Tennessee suing the federal government. And a lot of folks, I understand, want to come here, and they have really horrible personal stories to tell. They've been through a lot. But the way we take in refugees has to be very smart. Instead, what the federal government is doing is they're dumping a huge number of refugees and many of them are from the same neighborhoods, not just from the same countries. And so what does that do? That encourages assimilation? Does that encourage people to mix in the community and become fully American? Unfortunately, it encourages a further balkanization of America. We've seen it in places like St. Cloud, Minnesota. We've seen it in Fargo, North Dakota. We're seeing it in Oklahoma. We're seeing it in Nebraska. And we are seeing it in Tennessee. And Tennessee has had just about enough of this. Check out these facts. Fiscal year 2017, okay? Just in fiscal year 2017. That's October to, so far we only have the numbers through December of last year. So it starts in the fall of 2016 and it's ongoing until this coming October. 568 individuals have been settled in Tennessee, refugees, overwhelmingly Muslim. 151 came from Congo, 86 from Iraq, 78 from Somalia, 67 from Syria. I really want to know how many are Christian. But they're overwhelmingly, because it tracks the national trend. 8.6% Muslim. In fiscal year 2016, okay, just in 2016, the preceding fiscal year, Tennessee took in 2,051 refugees. Most of them, again, are coming from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Because when I think of Tennessee, I think of the Congo. 516 people. Others, Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Bhutan, Burma, and Afghanistan. Why in particular parts of Tennessee are these individuals being placed? And do the states have any recourse from the federal government planting these folks inside the states? Joining us now, John Stevens is an attorney, state senator representing Tennessee's 24th district. And he's going to shed some light on Tennessee suing the federal government over these rules that apply to refugees. And he joins us now. Senator Stevens, good to have you with us, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Laura, for giving me the opportunity to talk to your listeners and open up the discussion on this important lawsuit we filed.
Tell us the underlying cause of action that you have, and what are you basing it on?
The lawsuit itself is really not so much about, although it's about the refugee resettlement program, it's really about the spending clause and the 10th Amendment. I'm on the finance committee for the state of Tennessee. I'm on the appropriations chair, and so we have to balance our budget by our Constitution. And as the federal government is placing people in our state, they become eligible for certain state services, and we have no control over that budget item. We estimate that 31 million state dollars were spent last year on these resettled refugees. My constituents didn't have any voice in those dollars being spent because we had to spend those dollars. We're being forced to pay it by the federal government, and so it's where they used to pay for it, but they cut it out in the early 90s. And this issue, it's just really, to me, it's a fiscal issue. It's an issue of my constituents. I'm responsible to answer to them politically, but I'm not having a choice on taking, because we don't ask them for their tax dollars. We demand it and take it, and then we have to spend it. And so I don't have a say in that, but I'm politically responsible for those. For those decisions,
so just
and that's just not fair.
For people who don't know the 10th Amendment, don't know what it says. It's rarely invoked. It's often referred to, but rarely invoked. And here's what it states. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. Meaning the federal government can't take power away from the states that isn't specifically delegated to the federal government in the Constitution. It's not like they have carte blanche to be able to lay all this stuff on the states if they don't have the enumerated ability to do that. And that's what you're relying on here, along with your reference to the spending question. A lot of folks aren't aware of how much the resettlement of refugees costs individual states. Can you shed any light on that?
It's actually a fantastic question, because even as a member of the state finance committee responsible for balancing our budget, it's extremely difficult for us to get the information out of our own departments, our own agencies, exactly what those costs are, because these refugees will qualify for any number of programs, but and then we when you ask the department for information about what and any way to find them, so you listed just a moment ago, you listed people from other countries and specific nations, and amazingly, and like for example our Medicaid program, they can't ask them, or they don't even ask them on the application. Mm-hmm. Where are you from? You can't.
Well, there have been all sorts of. Okay, so we'll talk about the social services in a second, but there have been lots of pieces written about the high cost of resettling these refugees, and many of them coming from North Africa and the Middle East. And the one estimate that we took to heart came out in late 2015, and on average, and just focusing on the Middle Eastern refugees, I know you have a lot of folks from Syria being resettled in Tennessee and also in Iraq. The average cost of each refugee resettled in the U.S. costs an estimated $64,370 in the first 5 years, or $257,481 per household. And we know for a fact that in many of the states where refugees are resettled, predominantly settled, that's not just that. Like when you arrive here, you get a check, and that check, I believe, comes from the federal government, doesn't it? And it goes on for how long? Is it 2 years, 1 year? A monthly check? It
does, and I don't have that in front of me, what that length of time is. And that's part of the issue as well, is frankly, the state of Tennessee used to be involved in this. And for my the NBC News, I was talking to a reporter yesterday, and she did an article. She mentions my Republican Party affiliation, but she doesn't mention that the Democrat governor in 2007, who got Tennessee out of the program, she failed to mention that he was a Democrat. But this is an issue that the state has been trying to get out of this program for a long time, but because it's now run through a contractor in the State Department, they go with a private nonprofit to administer the program. Finding out the information from them, they're a nonprofit. We don't have any regulatory authority over them to get into their numbers, so it's really hard to find out even what the refugees are getting through that.
This is just ridiculous. I mean, to most people listening to the show across the country, the fact that we can't get a specific number on state services, you have to average it out, but the state services costs per refugee and the federal government outlays to each refugee, and Drew is efforting this right now, because to me, that is relevant. And at a time where we have such tight budgets in states, we have budget deficits in many of our states, and of course we have a massive debt we don't want to hand off to the next generation. We want to help people when we can, but Drew says it's $1,875 per month for each refugee. So it costs taxpayers per year about $20,000 per refugee. How long does that go on, Drew? Does it go on for a year? Somehow I thought it's 2 years, but maybe it goes on for, maybe it says ever. We have money, can just print the money. It's going on forever. So we have quantitative easing. We just keep printing the money. So is it your position, Senator Stevens, in Tennessee, that until the financial issues are settled, you shouldn't take any of these refugees? And again, many of them coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I don't get that, but go ahead. I mean, would you say no refugees until you get this cleared up?
I come at it from the position of if the federal government has got a program that they are going to not even allow us to have any input or discuss it, because that's been a lawsuit that's been thrown out. Or several states, Tennessee joined that lawsuit years ago, and it was thrown out that we just want to be able to communicate about who's coming into our state.
Right.
But if they're going to do it, pay for it. They're my citizens. I'm politically responsible to my citizens. But the federal government, so somebody way off in Washington is determining how to spend my citizens' taxpayers or taxpayer dollars. And that, under the spending clause, that's what Chief Justice Roberts got with, or went in the Sebelius case, that's what got rid of the Medicaid expansion. They overreached. It's the difference. It's the line between incentivizing states to participate in federal programs and coercing us. That's why I specifically used Chief Justice Roberts' economic dragooning, and that's what's going on. We don't have a say in it. They're just spending our money from Washington, and we don't have a say in it. So, what I would prefer is, look, if you're going to do it, you pay for it. We don't want to pay for it. It's been pretty clear.
Well, I can tell you one thing:
bipartisan agreement, bipartisan across party lines.
The U.S. pays $1.5 billion of the price tag of the $4 billion annual budget at the UN High Commissioner of Refugees. So we, as always, we cover most of the bill, considering all these other member nations. $1.5 billion out of $4 billion. We were just meeting with the Saudi ambassador yesterday. We got the Chinese president going down to Mar-a-Lago. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I mean, I guess you got to talk to him.
I was encouraged by the Executive Order 2.0 on refugees. That there is a section of it that says that states should be granted a role in the process of determining the placement or settlement. So at least President Trump and Secretary Tillerson are
what's the assimilation?
Willing to talk to us
they're
about
talking
it.
about it, but I mean, they want to cut the 50% of the budget to the UN refugee fund, so they do want to cut that down to, I guess, $0.75 billion. But I want to ask you a quick question. Talk about the assimilation of the refugees in Tennessee. I mean, we got a lot of folks from the Congo heading to Nashville and cutting records. I mean, what's going on there in Tennessee?
It is of a concern that, I mean, obviously,
I can't imagine why.
Who's a refugee and who isn't, but there is certainly a population of various faiths that are more prevalent in Nashville than they used to be.
Various faiths? So of the percentage of people coming into Tennessee, what's the percentage of Muslims versus the percentage of the aggrieved Christians who are beheaded regularly?
Yeah, now, again, I don't think we're getting many.
You're not getting that information? That's
well,
lovely.
And here's the explanation that we received was that you cannot be a refugee, a persecuted religious refugee Christian from northern Iraq because those folks are still in Iraq. They haven't been displaced out of their country.
Oh yeah, what? First of all, that's just false.
Exactly.
I know that for a fact.
It's
I have
insane.
one of my close friends, a
been
priest, is in Mosul right now. They've lost more than 70% of Christians out of Iraq. That's just a lie. That's not true at all.
And think of Aleppo.
I'll quote Gary Johnson. What's Aleppo? Go ahead.
That happened under the Obama administration. A massive slaughter.
Right,
it was a genocide of Christians.
No.
But because those poor Christians didn't leave Syria, they don't qualify to be refugees.
No, they can't go to the camps because the camps are infiltrated by ISIS, and they're the first ones targeted in the camps. Look, I'm running away.